Los Angeles Clippers owner Donald Sterling is facing much criticism after a tape was released over the weekend indicating that he could be a racist prick. Now, the LA Clippers did release a statement about this, specifically the president of the Clippers, and there's an allegation that the ex-girlfriend released this tape as a strike back or revenge for a lawsuit that she's facing. His wife has actually filed a lawsuit against her, and she said, if you're going to file that lawsuit, these are all allegations, by the way, if you're going to file that lawsuit, then I'm going to release these tapes, and she did. Now, according to the Clippers president...
That's the allegation, but let's just point out, he's been married for 50 years to this woman. He has one great story, which I do want to bring you. I also mentioned it on TYT Sports, but it bears repeating. But that's the allegation, that she released this, because there's a crazy lawsuit filed by the wife essentially saying that the girlfriend is taking community property and that he's had girlfriends forever, and he has. That's his rep. But the lawsuit, I read it from the LA Times today, is so nuts you can't even tell which lawyer it is, because the allegations are they're so damning to every party involved in every sentence. You're like, oh, look at her. No, that's got to be the wife's lawyer. No, that's her lawyer's response.
It is very confusing.
Like, it's really hard to follow. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. I don't care. I couldn't be less interested in her motivation for releasing the tapes, or someone else's motivations if they took the tapes from them. The tapes are authentic. It's been 2 days now, right, since the story broke, and there is no denial whatsoever from the Clippers or Donald Sterling. No, I did not say that. That is not me, or this has been re-edited. It's nothing, and it's real. And when you learn Donald Sterling's history, which we have been talking about on TYT Sports for years, and so when you learn that history, you realize, of course he said these things. It's exactly the kind of thing he has said, and is a verbal representation of the behavior that he's engaged in ever since he's been in public life, which is essentially 30 years at least since he's owned the team.
So now let me read you the Clippers president's statement.
This is a mistake.
It is a mistake. So he says, the ex-girlfriend is the defendant in a lawsuit brought by the Sterling family alleging that she embezzled more than $1.8 million, who told Mr. Sterling that she would, quote, get even. Mr. Sterling is emphatic that what is reflected on that recording is not consistent, nor does it reflect his views, beliefs, or feelings. It is the antithesis of who he is, what he believes, and how he has lived his life. He feels terrible that such sentiments are being attributed to him, and apologizes to anyone who might have been hurt by them.
Might have been hurt by them.
Amazing. Amazing.
So if I'm Andy Rosser, the president of the Clippers, you have a decision to make in your life right now. And the decision to make is, do I want to stay on and stand next to the captain of the fucking Titanic, and the water is rushing in everywhere?
Grab a violin.
Or perhaps there's enough lifeboats for everybody, and you could say, the Clippers' official position is that the tapes haven't been authenticated, and the NBA is investigating, and that's all we have to say.
That's
and you say to Donald Sterling, I want you to say that it's this and this, it's because of this dispute, and you go, you're free to say that, and if you need to fire me right now, then I'll be the guy who got fired by Donald Sterling in the middle of this, and I'll be a hero, and I'll go work for the Lakers, I'll go work for the Sacramento Kings, the Dodgers, or whatever. But like, don't stand with him. Don't
he was defending.
Stand with it's an incredibly weak defense, but it's a stupid mistake for a stupid organization that is the most pitifully run organization in the history of modern sports, and got a gift when the Lakers got that arena built downtown, and then they invited the Clippers to be their poor little stepbrother and share that arena, so it seems like they're a real team as opposed to playing in the dump that they used to play in. And then they're incredibly poorly run. They make mistake after mistake after mistake, and then one year they get the #1 pick, and oh my God, it's Blake Griffin, and they get incredibly lucky. And then the NBA hands them Chris Paul 2 years later in bizarre fashion. And look at this, all of a sudden, they're fun and exciting, and we as a society and a community in Los Angeles decide, isn't Donald Sterling a racist? I thought I'd read that he was a racist. And then we're like, they're fun to watch. It's Dunk City, it's Lob City. And we decided to ignore that, and then you go back and you read the history of Donald Sterling, and you're like, oh my God, how is this guy ever given an ounce of respect in this town?
Yeah, I mean, in the past, he's a real estate mogul. That's how he became so incredibly wealthy. And in the past, he was found guilty of trying to push Koreans out of housing in Koreatown. And he had to pay a settlement as a result of that.
You're referring to getting Koreans out, but he also wanted blacks and Latinos out of it. Those are the accusations in the lawsuit by the federal government.
Now, this is according to USA Today. In 2005, Sterling, a real estate tycoon, agreed to pay an undisclosed amount, so we don't know what the amount is, in a lawsuit that alleged Sterling tried to force non-Koreans out of apartments in Koreatown. I'm glad that that clarification is there. And also in 2009, Sterling paid a then record $2.73 million Justice Department penalty for rental housing discrimination.
That relates to blacks and Latinos. I have some quotes from those suits. That's because of all the blacks in this building, they smell, they're not clean. That was an allegation that he apparently said to a property supervisor in 2002. Then this is all in the sworn testimony that related to that lawsuit. It's because of all the Mexicans that just sit around and smoke and drink all day. That's another one. I don't like Mexican men because they smoke, drink, and just hang around the house. Here's another one. Is she one of those black people that stink? Just evict the bitch.
Oh my God.
Regarding signing Danny Manning, who was the #1 pick in the draft in 1988, who's now about to be the head coach at somewhere good. He just left Tulsa for somewhere good. Why am I blanking out on where it is? Anyway, he just got a good gig. He said about offering Danny Manning, I'm offering a lot of money for a poor black kid. Then regarding the Koreans, I don't have to spend any more money on them. They'll take whatever conditions I give them and they'll still pay the rent. That was to Koreans. Elgin Baylor, who was a great NBA player, who was his general manager, Sterling later admitted he didn't know that Elgin Baylor had played in the NBA when he hired him as his general manager. The guy's one of the 50 greatest NBA players of all time. According to general manager Elgin Baylor, Sterling envisioned, quote, a southern plantation type structure for the Clippers, one in which, as he allegedly put it to Baylor, so Baylor says that Sterling said this to him, poor black boys from the South played for a white head coach. Now, the best story I told on Sports, again, I think it bears repeating. In 1983 or 84, the Clippers had a general manager who wanted to hire a new head coach. They fired their coach, a guy named Paul Silas, who played a lot of years in the league. So there's a head coach at Villanova University named Rollie Massimino, and he was an up-and-coming coach then. He was a fun guy. He was, Tommy Lasorda, the old manager of the Dodgers. This guy was like a college basketball version of Tommy Lasorda, kind of Italian and round. And fun, right? And like a great quote, like Rollie Massimino could handle LA media and he'd be a fun guy, right? And he's a really good basketball mind. So they bring him out. The Clippers then played in San Diego. So the team president and the general manager bring Massimino out. They have no intention of having him meet the owner because the owner's Donald Sterling and he's a fucking nut job, right? So they bring Massimino out to San Diego. Sterling calls them and says, I'd like to meet this guy. Can I meet him at LAX? As a stopover for his return to Philadelphia, because Massimino's going to fly San Diego, LAX, Philadelphia. And the Clippers guys are like, oh, shit, we really liked him, and now he's going to meet Donald Sterling. And they say to Massimino, they say, hey, just a little bit of warning. This, by the way, comes from a book by Jeff Pearlman, who's a renowned, well-regarded, real writer. Written 6 books. He's a New York Times reporter and he's a writer. This is information he gathered for a book that he didn't include in the book because it didn't fit in with anything else. So they say to Massimino, okay, look, you're going to meet the owner, and just so you know, he wears a lot of gold chains, his shirt will be open, and he's always with like kind of a bimbo. Right? And so the guy, Massimino's like, hey, okay, whatever. I've dealt with, the corrupt world of college basketball recruiting. I can probably handle this guy. He flies to LAX. He gets met by Sterling. Sterling stinks of champagne at that point, right? And what do you know? He has some blonde bimbo with him who Massimino kind of thinks is a hooker. I may be adding that part, but I think it helps the story. They meet, and drunk Sterling asks Massimino, and I'm about to use the word because I think it makes the story matter more. Sterling asked Massimino, I want to know why you think you can coach these niggers. Oh my God. Massimino lands in Philadelphia, calls the guys back in LA, sleeping. He lands at like 7 a.m. on the red eye and calls them, and he's like, just so you know, I'm not coming to work for you. I'm not going to go work for that guy, and relays that story. He didn't include it in the book. He did write a story about it, this guy Jeff Pearlman did, in 2013. He's not even bringing up this story now. He's bringing up this story back when the Clippers hired their current coach, Doc Rivers, back in 2013. And he was just like, hey, by the way, I have this fun story about Donald Sterling. Maybe you just pay attention to it. And of course, once again, nobody did pay attention to it, or not enough people paid attention to it, and now we have it backed up, and now I don't think any of us have any trouble believing any of these other stories. Of course, they're all true.